believe that if you have got enough ambition, you can make it anywhere.
Hey everybody, this is TJR.
And this is Superfan.
Just hanging out with our little guy here. And tonight, we finally got the opportunity to watch the Elton John documentary, It's Never Too Late. And this documentary is on Disney+.
Yes, it is.
It came out last month in December. We're just getting to it now. It is January 5th. Yes, the holidays kind of got in the way.
Yes.
And now that we've seen it, I can't believe we put it off for as long as we did.
Yeah.
Because this is terrific.
It was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is on Disney Plus, and some of the documentaries on Disney Plus that are, you know, music related have been very much critically acclaimed, like Get Back, and everybody's pretty much unanimous. All the hardcore fans are unanimous that it's great. But then something like Beatles 64, which I had really mixed feelings about. All of the, you know, Beatle fans out there had really mixed feelings about. This one, I'm happy to say, really succeeds at covering the period of Elton's life that it's focusing on. And I want to talk a little bit about how it's structured. This documentary is primarily structured around a series of audio interviews that Elton John did in preparation for writing his memoir, which is the book entitled Me, which we have both listened to the audiobook together.
Yeah, this was several years ago that came out.
And yeah, and it is a fantastic, if you really want the whole story, from his point of view, it is a fantastic book. And he covers everything. He covers every part of his life. He covers every album, every musical collaboration. I'm hard-pressed to think of anything he might have left out. If you really want the whole story, get that book or get the audiobook. And it's really good.
And the audiobook we listened to it on an audiobook and it was great. It
was great, yeah. Elton reads the introduction and the ending, and hopefully I can say his name right. Help me, Taron Egerton?
Taron.
Oh, Taron. I'm sorry. Man, I'm terrible.
I believe it's Taron.
I thought it was Taron. The actor who played him in the movie, Rocket Man. Okay, there we go. It's read by him, and he does a great job. And at times I forgot it was him reading. Of course, he had just finished playing Elton John in the movie, Rocket Man. But the book, it's about as honest as...
It's as honest as you're going to get.
Yeah, it's more honest than I think we have any right to expect. I think Elton really tries as hard as possible to be as honest as he possibly can about every aspect of his life.
And yeah, he didn't try to hide the ugly bits.
No, he did not at all. So in this documentary, of course, it's only about an hour and 45 minutes, roughly.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to cover everything, he primarily talks briefly about his childhood, about his parents being very abusive, about starting piano at an early age, already playing in pubs by the time he's 15, which to me is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
But at 15, he was playing pubs.
That was how he found acceptance, though. And where he felt good.
He talks about that. That's when he began to feel acceptance, was that, because he said his home life was so terrible. And he was afraid of both his parents, he said, because they were both physically abusive. They were both violently abusive. And he talks about that. And then he talks about pre-fame, his meetings with Bernie Taupin, writing songs together, how they were trying to just become professional songwriters who would write for other artists. That was their biggest goal, was just to be able to write songs for other artists and hopefully be successful in that regard, not for him to become a solo artist or to become a rock star or anything of that nature. Leading up to his first album, then his second album, and then it goes all the way up to the last album he talks about as far as his memories is Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy. And along all of that, there is a lot, of course, archival footage, some of which I'd seen before, a lot of it which I'd never seen before.
There was as much old archival interviews as there were new interviews.
And that's where we should talk about the second part of how this documentary is structured, because there is that's kind of like the A roll, and then there's the B roll, which is the secondary through line narrative, which is interspersed with this is Elton John in the months leading up to, not so much preparing, but leading up to his final American appearance at Dodger Stadium, and what he was doing at that time, playing concerts, working, collaborating with other musicians, just what he was doing up to that time, leading up to that. But I would say the majority of it is the recorded interviews of him discussing his past, and then of course the vintage footage of him performing, and also vintage interviews, some of which, like I said, I'd seen before, some of them which I had never seen before. At one point, I stopped it when he was giving an interview of him as a young man in the 70s. And I stopped it and I said, I haven't seen this particular interview, but I've seen interviews where he was acting the same way as he was in this interview. And I remember back then being just a young teenager who was a fan and watching him and thinking to myself, why is he acting so weird? Why is he acting so weird? I was too young to understand it back then, but now as an adult, I can see this is a deeply depressed man.
Yeah.
He's very emotionally in a low state amidst all this fame. He is just very deeply depressed, it seems, at least during these interviews. It just shows. And you mentioned, of course, he also looks very wasted.
Yeah.
Which, I'm sure he was.
Hand in hand, yeah.
Yeah. These things, they do sometimes go hand in hand. That's for sure, at least from what I've seen and read. I never got the opportunity to be a rock star. Yeah, he talks about it too. Just the amount of drugs, alcohol.
And the depression.
The depression, that set in, and how all of this was not bringing him any happiness. All this fame and glory and all of that. And saying that at one point he said, I was pretty much just living for music and living for my chart positions.
Yeah.
And that was the only thing in his life at that point, it seems, at times.
And it was around that time, I wasn't a teenager yet, even.
Uh-huh.
And had no clue who Elton John was.
Yes.
But my parents took me to an exhibition soccer game at the Rose Bowl.
Yes.
And I don't think we've ever talked about this story here.
You've told me this story, but we haven't talked about it on the channel, and this is a great story. Please tell everybody this story.
Anyway, we were at this soccer game, and I was bored out of my mind, and I got up and was walking around kind of...
which your parents would let you do.
Well,
back then.
I was a latchkey kid, so...
Yeah, okay.
I was at that age. So it wasn't that much different. They didn't see any problem with it.
Yeah. So anyways, you're walking around.
And anyway, this was at the Rose Bowl, and it was kind of over. It was a space that was really quiet.
You mentioned, though, that there was an announcement over the speaker, though.
There was an announcement that Elton John was there. I think that the team that he has part ownership or had part ownership at the time was one of the teams that was playing. And they announced that Elton John was there.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know how it happened. There was nobody around.
Uh-huh.
It's just me, and I was just kind of hanging out. I don't know what I was doing.
How old were you roughly at this point? Can you give me just a rough idea?
11, 12.
Okay.
Anyway, this guy comes walking through, and he was kind of snazzily dressed. He had a top, like a bowler hat.
Yeah.
And a cane.
Yeah.
That was very glitzy, and a rather large African-American bodyguard who was probably 2 feet taller than he was.
Uh-huh.
And I was walking around there, and he goes, "Oh, hi."
Uh-huh.
And I said, "Oh, hi." And we just walked our separate ways.
And you didn't know that was Elton John?
I had no clue.
Now, how did you know it later?
Because a couple of years later, we were living in New Orleans at that point.
Yeah.
and I went to a slumber party at a girlfriend's house, and she pulled out this album.
Yeah.
And there was that guy on the album cover.
You just recognized him from that moment.
And, you know, they were going on about, oh, how cool, and how cool it would be to meet him, and I just sat there and shut up.
Oh, that's a good story. Anyhow, though, but I'm glad you finally talked about that here. Yeah, she told me about this years ago, and I just thought that was really neat. But anyways, though, so but there is that the B-roll story though is I think the smaller part of it. The majority of it is the vintage stuff. And like I said in that interview, I suddenly realized, wow, that's why I thought he was weird back then in that interview, or unusual. The reminiscences, after talking about Captain Fantastic, he then talks about how he finally came out of the closet in the Rolling Stone interview, which I remember, that was before I graduated high school. And he talks about how it hurt his career. That it definitely hurt his career. There was a huge amount of backlash he got, especially in America. And I can remember some of my classmates, you know, talking negatively about it, saying, you know, why did he have to say that? I wish he'd never said it. Now I can't like him. And so the backlash, I remember the backlash. It was really there.
Yeah.
It was very much there.
That's stupid.
Yeah, I wish, you know, I could have, you know, at the time, of course, I was raised.
Well, you kind of felt the same way to a certain extent.
Well, I was confused.
You weren't comfortable with it, that's for
I was
sure.
confused because I was raised in a very strict Catholic family. I was raised that this was a sin. And I would like to be able to say I was brave enough to say, well, that's, you know, that shouldn't matter. It took me a while to actually figure out what I thought of it. It took me a little while. But after not too long of a period of time, what I would say to people, if anybody criticized me for liking Elton John, or if anyone made critical comments about it, and the 70s was very homophobic, especially when I was in high school, extremely homophobic.
Yeah.
Among teenagers, you know, of my generation. But if someone criticized me for liking Elton John, or for talking about his music, or just him in general, about him being gay, my response was, I don't care who he sleeps with. I care about his music. That's all I care about is the music. And I wish I could have been braver to say more, but again, I was very confused because of my upbringing. But it was the beginning. It was also, I think, maybe where I started to really question what I was being taught by my religious upbringing. And it's where I began to realize that my religious upbringing was wrong, that it was incorrect. In that regard.
Yeah.
In regards to that, they were incorrect. And I'll still stand by that they are incorrect. It's why I eventually stopped being Catholic. But that's a whole nother story. But anyways, though, after that, it's just he just kind of summarizes and says, it was good that I could finally be honest about that aspect of myself. But it would take another couple of decades, I forget exactly how long, before he could finally clean himself up. And he talks about that in his book in a great amount of detail. Before he could finally clean himself up and become a real person, and honestly who he was. That it took him, you know, I think he said it took me like 43 years to learn how to be a normal person. And so, yeah, that last part is summarized. So it primarily focuses on this area. Given the, like I said, given the length of time, I think it does a good job of covering that era. And I'm impressed with all the footage and audio we got. He discusses at great length his friendship with John Lennon, which he did in his book as well. Yeah. And he discusses at great length what sadly ended up being John Lennon's last live performance anywhere, which was with him at Madison Square Gardens during the 70s, and which is on the Here and There live album, which that audio is there. If you've never checked that out.
It's just good that exists and that was such a triumphant moment for him.
Yeah. For John Lennon, yes, it was a very triumphant moment.
Well, and I think for Elton John to
for Elton too,
give him that.
Yeah, he talks about it. How afterwards, there's very few talking heads in this documentary. There is an interview with somebody who was with part of the staff at the time, who describes that scene after the concert was done. That John Lennon at one point asked, "Where's Elton?" And the staff person said, "He's in the bathroom crying." Why is he crying? And it was just that he was just thrilled.
So thrilled
with the fact that he worked. Yeah, because he said in his recorded interviews looking back, he said, I could have died and gone to heaven because I can remember as a kid riding on my bicycle to go buy a Beatle album, to go buy the latest Beatle album or Beatle record, just the 45, and that and now here I am, working with him, and he just talked about that whole experience of recording with him on the song Whatever Gets You Through the Night, and how that recording led to them performing together.
Yeah, because Elton John told John Lennon, this is going to be number one, and John Lennon's like, no, it's not. And he goes, tell you what, if it goes number one, you're going to perform with me live on stage.
Yeah, and that's how that happened.
But
yeah, he talks a great deal about that, and he does talk about his friendship a great deal in the book. And obviously that was a very important friendship to him. I know in the book, not covered in this film, there's so much that's in the book that couldn't be covered in this film. But then this film is not an adaptation of the book.
No, it's not.
It's focusing on
its own thing.
Yeah, it's focusing on a certain area mainly. But it can't just stop there and say that then all these ensuing decades didn't happen. So he just summarizes it very quickly. And then we're here at his final American performance at Dodger Stadium.
Yeah.
So that, and of course we got to see Elton during that farewell tour when he performed right before COVID. And then that tour got postponed, not canceled, but postponed due to COVID. And then it resumed once things got back to normal again.
Yeah.
And my big sister, who didn't get to see him prior to COVID, who was a huge Elton John fan also, in fact, introduced me to Elton John. It was her influence that introduced me to his music. Got to go see him at that final show at Dodger Stadium. She was there.
She was at the original Dodger Stadium.
Yes, she was. And that's the thing is, she was very glad to be there because she was at the original Dodger Stadium show back in the 70s. And so she was thrilled to be able to attend this final one. Because the Dodger Stadium show, like his performance at the Doug Weston's Troubadour, which is now considered a legendary performance. They still talk about it to this day. So was his 70s Dodger Stadium show. It was just one of those performances that just fans still talk about, those who were there. It's considered one of his best performances ever. I was too young for that, but my big sister, who was a few years older than me, went to it when she was in high school. And she still talks about it and has memories of it. She's, shared her memories of that with me. But
sitting on the dugout.
Yes.
She always talks about sitting on the dugout.
Yeah. Anyways, though, but I was really impressed with this documentary. This is one of the better ones that has been on Disney Plus. I know there have been mixed feelings about some of these, some of them being better than others, and that's just life, people. That's just how things work. Some things are better than others. I remember we both thought that the Beach Boys documentary was really good until we saw that a lot of that footage was taken out of an earlier documentary from a few decades ago. And while the new one had some stuff that the older one didn't, we both realized that like 75 to 80% of that new documentary came from that older one. Yeah. And so we're, our opinion of it kind of lessened a little bit once we knew that. Yeah. Because viewers told us about it, and then we watched it and said, "Oh, yeah, that new Beach Boys documentary seemed pretty cool when we didn't know about that older one from a couple decades ago."
Yeah.
It changed our thoughts. But this one here, so much of this I've never seen. Some of it I had, but I was just really impressed. I thought it did a good job of covering that period, especially since we both had read his book. I say read, but we listened to it as audiobook. And I would say, if you're a a real serious Elton fan like I am, I think you're going to be pleased with this. Even if it doesn't cover everything, I think it covers what it does cover really well. I think you'll agree. And you'll enjoy seeing all the archival performance and interview footage from the time periods. And if you're someone who is maybe a casual fan or wants to know more, I think this movie is going to give you, this not movie, but documentary, is going to give you a lot of good insights. And if you found that you really liked this film, I would really recommend the next step would be to read his book, me, or listen to the audiobook as we did, and experience that. Because I think that's just very thorough and very complete. But I just wanted to say, if you have any interest in Elton John, don't miss this. Don't let the Disney Plus tag steer you away. I know some people just get turned off by that. I know you have your reasons. Don't let this steer you away. This is really a good documentary film about Elton John. And anyways, though, we just wanted to put that out there. And let us know if you've seen this. And if you have, share your thoughts, good or bad. And let us know if this has perhaps intrigued you to go check it out. And after you do check it out, let us know what you think. And everybody, thank you so much for watching. As always, if you like these videos, be sure to hit like, hit subscribe, hit the bell notification icon so you never miss a video. Thank you, patron supporters. Patron supporters receive exclusive weekly videos not available on this channel. If you'd like to be a patron supporter, go to patreon.com/TJR the original. If you can't, I understand. You can always leave a one-time super thanks. That helps us a lot here. Or you can just click like, and that helps this channel as well.
You're fierce and mighty.
We'll see you all in the next video, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.